A dead man was in the closet. Well, that is the cold, hard fact. He was not found for a year and a half. This story begins not with a scream, but with a quiet disappearance and the steady drain of a bank account. It is a story about trust, deception, and a body hidden in plain sight. In 2005, in the quiet Denver suburb of Lakewood, Colorado, something terrible was happening inside an ordinary apartment. A 64-year-old man named O'Neill was dead. But for 18 long months, almost no one knew. His life had ended, but his money kept moving. The people at the center of this grim affair were a couple, James and Suzanne Andrews. To their neighbors, they were just another part of the community. People saw them come and go. They lived their lives, but they held a dark secret. James O'Neill was 64 years old. He was a veteran. He had family, but they did not live nearby. In late 2003, he seemed to simply drop off the map. Calls went unanswered. Letters were returned. At first, his family may have thought he was just living his life, choosing to be out of touch for a while. It is a plausible explanation for an independent man. People lose contact. Life gets in the way. There was no immediate reason to suspect foul play. There was only a growing, quiet unease. The silence from O'Neill stretched from weeks into months, and the worry began to take root. The couple, James and Suzanne Andrews, had known O'Neill. They were supposed to be his friends, perhaps even caregivers. It appears he trusted them. He may have relied on them for help. This trust was the door they walked through to gain access to his life and, ultimately, his finances. While O'Neill's family was trying to reach him, the Andrews were living off his money. They kept his death a secret. The truth began to surface because of money. It almost always does. O'Neill's family, concerned by the long silence, started to look into his financial affairs. What they found was alarming. His bank account was active, very active. There was a consistent pattern of withdrawals from various ATMs. Small amounts, hundreds of dollars at a time, were being taken out regularly. It was this trail of money that would eventually unravel the whole terrible secret. Lakewood is not a place where you expect such a macabre tale to unfold. It is a city of parks, quiet residential streets. Yet this case showed how easily a person can vanish, even just a few feet away, behind a wall. The Andrews' apartment became a tomb. They lived their daily lives around it. They went to work. They bought groceries. And all the while, the body of O'Neill lay hidden under an air mattress. O'Neill's family started to notice something strange. Money was leaving his account. Not in one large sum, but in a steady, methodical trickle of cash withdrawals. Dates, times, locations. The money was being taken from machines all over the Denver area. This was someone local with access to O'Neill's debit card and PIN. The family presented the bank statements to the Lakewood Police Department and reported James O'Neill missing. With the bank records in hand, the Lakewood Police Department began its methodical work. This was not a case for SWAT teams and high-speed chases. Not yet. It was a case for patient, detailed detective work. The first step was to analyze the ATM withdrawal data. Investigators mapped out the locations of the machines. They looked for patterns. Withdrawals were concentrated in specific areas, suggesting the suspect lived or worked nearby. The key was to identify the person using the card. Modern banking leaves a digital footprint. The next step, pull the ATM surveillance footage. This is standard procedure. Detectives began reviewing hours of video. They were looking for a face. It did not take long to find one. A woman making withdrawals from O'Neill's account. On other occasions, a man was seen. They were identified as Suzanne Andrews and her husband, James Andrews. This was the breakthrough. The missing man's money was being taken by people he knew. On May 5, 2005, detectives from the Lakewood Police Department executed the search warrant at the Andrews apartment. The moment they stepped inside, they knew something was wrong. A powerful, foul odor hung in the air, the unmistakable smell of decomposition. Even months later, it can linger. They were there for financial crimes, but their senses said something worse had happened. The smell was concentrated in one spot. Their search led to a bedroom closet. Inside, A strange arrangement. A deflated air mattress on the floor, covered with blankets and items. A clumsy attempt at concealment. Officers moved the bedding and mattress. Underneath it all, a human body. Severely decomposed, almost skeletal, wrapped in cloth. Later identified through dental records as 64-year-old James O'Neill. He had been found. He had been there the whole time. The scene was shocking and pathetic. With the discovery of O'Neill's body, the police moved quickly to locate and arrest James and Suzanne Andrews. They were taken into custody without incident. The story they told began to unravel under questioning. At first, they offered conflicting accounts and denials, but the evidence was overwhelming. They were on camera using the dead man's bank card. His body was in their closet. Their apartment was filled with his personal documents. There was no plausible way to explain it away. They were caught in a web of their own making, a web woven with lies and sustained by a dead man's money. The investigators' task was to build an ironclad case. The autopsy was inconclusive regarding the cause of death. Decomposition made it impossible to say if he was murdered or died of natural causes. This was a critical point. Without a clear cause of death, prosecutors focused on what they could prove: theft, forgery, abuse of a corpse. The motive was simple and stark: greed. In the end, James and Suzanne Andrews were held accountable. They faced the judicial system for their actions. James Andrews pleaded guilty to theft and abuse of a corpse. He was sentenced to prison. Suzanne Andrews also faced charges related to the elaborate deception. Justice, in a legal sense, was served. The case was closed. The family of James O'Neill received answers, though not the ones they wanted. The most profound question is about the beginning. How did James O'Neill actually die? Since the autopsy was inconclusive, we may never know. Natural causes, an accident, something more sinister. Did the Andrews simply find him dead and seize an opportunity? Or did they play a more active role in his death? This ambiguity hangs over the entire case. A permanent question mark. How does something like this happen in a modern society? A man disappeared, and for a year and a half, the system failed to notice. Neighbors noticed oddities but did not intervene. Do we have a duty to check on our neighbors? What is the price of not paying attention?